welcome to today's stream. Finally, YouTube is letting me hit the go live button. So today we have a number of stories. It is of course Easter. It's Good Friday. So I hope everybody has a good Easter weekend. For those in countries which observe it, and for people who observe it, of course. So yeah, we'll get started in a minute, guys, with the recording. So I'm just checking that the stream looks okay, whether it's good enough quality today, before we get started. So yeah, so I think that will be good. The stream looks like it's decent, so yeah, the stream health is okay. So we can get started in a minute. But hello, Piggis. We previously weren't streaming, were we? Yeah, so to be fair, we didn't really need that sort of intermission bit because yeah, we actually weren't streaming, so you guys didn't have to wait through that at least. So that's cool. Now, so today, yeah, we got a few stories, so let's just get into them. So yeah, I just need to quickly send something out. So yeah. But yeah, Piggis, have you had a good week? A good, yeah, a good Friday? Yeah, so, of course, you know, we're heading into the Easter weekend, so a lot of people have time off. And yeah, of course, you know, yeah, we're in that Easter time of year, I suppose, so, yeah. Anyway, let's actually get started now. So, we are going to cover the first story, guys. So, if you are listening to the recording, hello, welcome to the Sandro Linux Community Podcast. It is the 29th of March. It is, of course, Easter. It is Good Friday today. And yeah, so we still have some news to cover. I hope everybody's having a... yeah, I hope everybody's well. And yeah, let's get started with the story that's actually in the title. So, this is some pretty bad news for those living in Scotland. Specific bits of Scotland, it appears, from this report. So, if you live in the affected regions, currently it is not actually fully known, although a Scottish government spokesperson said, I think it's in Galloway and Dumfries. So yeah, so if you're in those regions, then you might be affected by this data breach and by this cyber attack. So they claimed that they stole 3 terabytes of data, and if they actually, if they actually did steal 3 terabytes of data, I'm guessing it would be more than from these 2 regions, but we can't exactly be sure at current moment because, yeah, we don't exactly know the magnitude of this cyber attack, like how many bits of NHS Scotland were affected, and this is overall bad news because this does affect customer data. So if you are a patient, if you're an NHS Scotland patient, then some of your records could have been breached here. So that does include a lot of personal data, which could now be in the hands of this ransomware gang. So the gang themselves are INC Ransom, and they are the people currently claiming responsibility for the attack. And I don't really think there would be much reason to lie about hacking a firm, about hacking like NHS Scotland, because they would have to, actually sell the data. So yeah, it is most likely this group who carried out the attack, and it's overall just another one of many cyber attacks on different organizations and government organizations. So a few years ago, we had the NHS cyber attack, which took place on some, I think it was nationwide when it came to WannaCry. So that was back in 2017 now. But overall, the NHS does seem like a bit of a target for some cyber criminals who think that they can get some patient data which could be quite valuable to them. And overall, I think it shows the importance of actually safeguarding customer data and patient data, and making sure that cybersecurity is actually a priority within organizations. Yeah. Do you have any thoughts, Pigus? That would be a good goal. Yeah. But apart from that, I don't think there's any other stories to do with hacks we're covering today. Although there was a story that I did see that I forgot to put in the notes, which was that the Big Issue has also been hacked. So the Big Issue is a newspaper primarily sold by homeless people and people trying to get off the street. And apparently they have been hacked, and there's been some personal data of sellers that have been compromised, as well as the different employees of the organization in general. And yeah, that's another example of where a ransomware gang has decided to hack an organization to try and get some personal data from it. Yeah. Have there been any recent big cyber attacks in Sweden, Pigus, that you've heard about? Yeah, because it seems like everywhere these days is everywhere these days seems to be having a cyber attack. So yeah, yeah. Not every time it's a big organization. Yeah. Um. So yeah. Although sometimes they sort of have to if they have customer data because of GDPR requirements and stuff like that. But anyway, moving on to the AI stories here. So we're moving away from the cybersecurity. And yeah, one story this week. The non-profit arm of Google, a new Google non-profit arm, is apparently launching an AI accelerator to fund new projects. So apparently this is called the Google.org Accelerator for Generative AI. So this is an interesting project from Google. I'm not exactly sure what their sort of goal is to do with this charitable work, and whether this is actually sincere charity, or whether they're going to try and benefit from this somehow. It's not immediately apparent, but they do say that they want to make AI help create social change. So, of course, they are trying to sort of advertise some admirable goals here, and I'm not exactly sure what this AI accelerator will end up funding, but it does remind me a lot of other companies who have put money into funding different AI projects and different software projects in the past, and hoped that they became the next big thing. I think a number of companies have gone through that process, haven't they? Biggest. Do you know? Yeah, there was like Y Combinate? I don't remember. Do you remember what the name is? They're the people who do like Hacker News, I think. Y Combinator? I don't remember. Anyway, it reminds me a bit of them, with them trying to help new startups and help new technology companies get off the ground with some funding. And of course, this is a non-profit effort. However, Google could seek to do something quite similar to that with AI. So yeah. An interesting story there, I suppose. Now, Gemini, which has been in the news quite a bit recently, it is apparently now making a appearance in Google Messages. So you'll now be able to. In previous weeks, we've reported about the Google Messages potentially integrating Gemini, but now it is actually showing up in beta builds. So now, if you want to get help from Gemini, you can just send a text to Gemini, and it will text you back. So that's interesting, I suppose. You'll apparently have to be 18 to use this feature, just like Gemini in general. And yeah, this will only work in select countries, and there's a number of restrictions applied to it. But this is a pretty interesting feature for people using Google Messages. Do you have any thoughts, Pigus? No, it's just a nice feature, a nice addition to Google Messages. No, it's now actually out in the open. You can now actually download beta builds which have this functionality, so you can check those out if you want to. Anyway, moving on to a story that shouldn't be in this section. Okay, let me move this into another section. This is a phone news story. So this should not actually be in the AI section. Okay, excuse me. So apparently Databricks are claiming that their new AI LLM model outsmarts GPT 3.1. So this is good news for new, smaller AI developers, I suppose, because, of course, having a decent LLM model, which they can actually work with, could be pretty good for some developers. And if these claims are true, this would be a pretty big leap forward for open source LLMs. And yeah, of course, they're not claiming to be outcompeting GPT-4 here, but they are claiming to be outcompeting at least one of the ChatGPT models. And yeah, it will be interesting to see where this company goes with this open source LLM model. And yeah, do you have any thoughts, Pigus, about this one? Yeah, I mean, it's good to see development, isn't it? On models which people can actually use, which are actually open and not proprietary, I suppose. Yeah, so moving on to the mobile news here. So in the iPhone news, Apple is apparently outlining reasons to upgrade. So, of course, some people aren't upgrading their phones as regularly as they used to, And now Apple seems to want to encourage people to upgrade via new means. So this could be seen as a bit desperate, but this is an interesting marketing effort from Apple. So you can now see, compared to the latest iPhone, what features that you are missing. And of course, this is to encourage people to spend more money on iPhones and buy the latest model. And yeah, sales are much slower than they have been previously, with a lot of people holding onto their phones for much longer. And of course, Apple wants to disincentivize that. They do want people to be upgrading. So this is an interesting way of them just nudging people in that general direction. Do you have any thoughts on that, Pigus? I don't know. Yeah, typical Apple marketing. It's the sort of thing that their marketing department has done in the past, and yeah, I reckon they'll do. Continue doing stuff like this. They love a simple comparison, a little, sleek user interface to show the differences, and then get people to spend even more money on iPhones. So yeah. What do you mean by update policies? I think they update it. They update it for about 7, 8 years. Similar with the Mac lineups as well. So overall, a much better software support than a lot of Android devices. Although we have seen a lot of Android companies recently actually improving their phone update lifecycle. So actually giving updates for longer, which is a much needed improvement, because until recently you could be buying phones which wouldn't get updates after like a year. So we're seeing less of that now, but we are still seeing that Apple still usually have a longer sort of update cycle for their phones than Android. Yeah. Yeah, as long as they still do that, and of course, you could be tempted to get a new iPhone, because of course they will have all of these new features. However, some of them will be present on the older devices. So yeah, with the level of software support that Apple give, yeah, it makes sense that they're going to try and incentivize people to move over to the newer phones, because they aren't doing that via cutting off support. Anyway, moving on to the next story here, something specific to Canada. So some news for Canadians out there. If you live in the Toronto area, this is going to be some pretty good news. Because Apple Pay Express mode is now available for TTC subway stations. So you can now actually use your travel pass with your iPhone without actually having to authenticate or unlock your phone. So this could be really convenient if you can't really be bothered to open up your phone, or you're in a bit of a rush and you just need to get through a turnstile. Yeah, this could be a pretty cool feature. And this is already rolled out previously in, I think, 2021 to Transport for London services. So here in the UK, if you are a Londoner, you will have already been able to experience this benefit. And yeah, it's cool. It's overall pretty cool to see this rolling out to more subway services. and more countries, because this is a pretty nice feature and a nice quality of life improvement. Yeah, what do you think about this, Piggis? I mean, being able to actually kind of use your phone to be able to use it as a travel pass 5 hours after your phone has died, up to 5 hours after your phone has died, is a pretty cool feature, I've got to say. I mean, you know, how many times people have their phone die and then they don't have their bus pass or they don't have their travel pass. This could be a pretty good thing for them, couldn't it? Yeah, so I could definitely see a use case for this, and hopefully it is rolled out to more transit services in the future. Now, Google have, you know, kind of leaked something by accident here, potentially. So Google says that Apple RCS will be coming in the fall. So for our non-American viewers, such as myself and everybody else, the fall means autumn. So it's around the autumn season. You know, in the UK, that's not really much of an expression. But anyway, moving on. So RCS is actually apparently coming to iPhone around that time period. And yeah, a Google page actually said this before Apple has even announced it. So this is pretty bad news for Apple if they were trying to keep this a secret, because this is now, of course, out in the open. I can't exactly be totally sure this is accurate. However, of course, Google may have some sort of insider knowledge on Apple's integration of RCS as the primary leaders in the technology. So yeah. And we'll have to see whether this actually comes true and whether you'll be able to message with iMessage to Android devices via RCS in the fall. Do you have any thoughts, Biggest? Good news for the Android users, right? I mean, I don't use Google Messages, so this kind of, you know, I currently don't think there's a way to use RCS without Google, but I'm not totally sure. I mean, yeah, you kind of have to have Google Messages, and personally, I use a different messaging app, but it is a cool feature for those who can utilize it. And it's been talked about for like ages now, but finally it might actually be coming. Yes, standardization. Cool. Anyway, yeah, so this is some AI/Android news here. So good news for the Pixel fans. So if you have a Pixel 8, Gemini Nano will now be available on device. So Google weren't exactly clear about whether they would allow you to run AI on device here, but now they have come out with the AI Gemini Nano model, and this will actually be available on Pixel 8 devices. So this is a nice feature for those who have Pixel devices, because of course being able to run an LLM on device is pretty cool. And of course, if you want to be able to use it offline, this could be a pretty nice feature. Also, apparently this model will also run on the Samsung Galaxy S24. So yeah. Yeah, they were previously, and now they made it a bit unclear for a bit, but now they have actually come out with it, so that's cool. Yeah, it's a remarkably pro-consumer move, quite frankly. Yeah, refreshing, you know? Refreshing. But yeah, so moving on to another refreshing story from Google. Doing a lot of good stuff this week, it seems. So Android 15 could now hide your location from carriers on command. So this anti-stingray feature could be just what you needed, says Android Police. So this is interesting, I suppose. Not totally sure how much of an improvement this will be, but you know, better than nothing, I suppose. So this feature will allow you to block non-emergency location requests from cellular networks. So this could protect against potential abuse. Of course, you might not want to give your location constantly to your cell network, but of course, I am sure there would be a way of circumventing this. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Piers, but do you think there'll be a way of like circumventing such a restriction? I mean, even if it's on the phone modem level, I think you could probably still triangulate somebody's position from cell towers, right? So perhaps this isn't the biggest improvement, especially if a cell network decides to use emergency, you know, liberally, I suppose. If they decide something's an emergency, which, you know, might not actually be an emergency. This could be abused, I suppose. But, yeah, this is overall a pretty cool feature on Android, and it does make me excited to see what other privacy features we might be getting with this latest version of Android. Yeah. Yeah, what are you thinking about the upcoming Android release, Piggers? Are you thinking that it will be, will you upgrade eventually? Get a new phone? Maybe? I mean, I personally don't even have a device which, yeah, is even on, like, Android 13 yet, let alone, Android 15. But, of course, people have really been enjoying some of the recent updates to Android with that new Material 1 design language that came out a few Android versions ago. And yeah, it is nice to see Android actually improving their privacy features here. But yeah, a win for Android privacy overall. It's nice to hear stories like that, you know? And another good story for those on WhatsApp, not on the privacy front, but on the feature front. Apparently, you can now get a new a new navigation bar. So the nav bar can now be at the bottom with an improved UI. So previously, previously there was there was a way of getting your nav bar at the bottom, but now you can actually have one that's slightly easier on your eyes. And yeah, this is a nice feature for those using WhatsApp. Now I've just got to ask, when are usernames coming to WhatsApp? I mean, that would be a pretty cool feature, you know. WhatsApp, that'll be pretty cool. Oh, my voice is cutting out. That's great. Let me see. What is going on here? Okay. That would be a pretty cool feature, you know. WhatsApp. Okay, so should I just be slightly less hot on the mic then, Piggis? Is that the problem, or is it something else? Oh, it's a Discord problem. It's not a live stream problem. That's good. That's good. So, if you're listening to the recording, it's hopefully not totally messed up. That's good. It's always annoying trying to do stuff in post, trying to, you know, edit together the audio and stuff. That can be annoying. So I'm glad that the that the audio is good on the stream aspect. Now, moving on to another story. So, Nothing is apparently already rolling out the third update to the Nothing Phone 2A. So this is good news for those who are using this phone, because, yeah, it does show quite a good commitment to taking the software experience seriously, and hopefully we should see more updates like this in the future. Small little quality of life improvements, but hopefully this does mean that, yeah, this will be a wider fixture for Nothing phones. So hopefully going forward we should actually see regular Android updates for Nothing devices. So previously they've been pretty good with updates, so we can just hope for that in the future, especially when it comes to major Android releases. Do you have any thoughts, Pigus? Good news for the Nothing users, right? Yeah. Yeah, so moving on to the other section. So sometimes we have a story on another mobile OS, and sometimes that's a Linux one, sometimes that's a one like Harmony OS. So Harmony OS is apparently, now it's apparently got its first developer who has made a native app. So CCTV Media, who are the state-owned media company in China, so owned by the Communist Party, I'm guessing, they've apparently now developed the first native app for the Harmony OS platform. So this is good news for people who are on Harmony OS, because it shows some clear development when it comes to people actually, some developers actually developing apps natively for this platform. And of course, this is quite limited, and it is, of course, expected that the Chinese government-owned news network will actually, develop an app for the domestic operating system. So, of course, they want to support the Chinese operating system, but we'll have to see whether this is a more widespread phenomenon than just CCTV, and yeah, we'll have to see where that goes. Do you have any thoughts, Pigus? I mean, very, very small app being put onto Harmony OS, as in it isn't really a big app outside of China, but it is still some development, I suppose, towards them having an app ecosystem. Yeah, what are your thoughts? No thoughts, okay. Yeah, of course they're going to try and develop that out, but this is one of the early steps in doing so, I suppose. Yeah, CCTV is a big news outlet in China. However, outside of China, nobody is really listening to CCTV. I mean, for one thing, CCTV is only in Mandarin and Cantonese, I think. So it's only in Chinese languages. And because CGTN is the Western wing of the Chinese government news. So this will really only affect people in China, but it is pretty big news for the Chinese audience, I suppose. Okay, so yeah. Yeah, true. But yeah, they have recently been trying to recoup some of their international audience, trying to get some of them back. But overall, they have had to rely quite heavily on the domestic Chinese market because, of course, yeah, they've been sanctioned all over the place, and the US, of course, didn't want anything to do with them. So they have, of course, been focusing more domestically. Yeah, and they were already a bigger player in China to start with. So yeah. Anyway, moving on here to the UK telecoms news. So, Honest Mobile is apparently reducing prices for 4G and 5G customers for loyal customers. So, if you are loyal to the platform and you actually stay on their plan, then your bill could drop by 0.41% each month, up until you have a discount of 30%. So, at the base level, this is not much of a discount. However, accumulating through the years, perhaps this could become more beneficial. However, it will take such a long time to get the best rates that this will probably not actually be worth it as a benefit. I mean, somebody in the comments points out here, you'll have to actually be a customer for like 6 years to get the best prices. So who knows if this benefit will be around for that long, whether that will actually be a thing that will be continued forward. And yeah, overall, there are networks offering better deals. So, of course, EE offer the boosts. So, if you use pay as you go, you can get pay as you go boosts every 3 months. And you can get like a few extra megabytes of data or a few extra calls, which is probably a better deal than this. Yeah, do you have any thoughts, Pigus? Pretty, dismal, I suppose, as discounts go. So let me think here, okay? So let's say you're paying £30 per month, you know? We're gonna be liberal here with the amount that people are actually spending monthly on their mobile. I don't think most people are spending that amount, but some people might be. So let's see what 0.41% of £30 is. So hang on, what's the actual yeah, 0.41%. So let's put that in, okay? So 30. Let me see here. Okay, so you might be getting back. Is that like 12 pence? Okay. Yeah, so that's not so great. And overall, the deal, yeah, if you're still a customer of theirs, then I suppose you could take advantage of this. However, I don't think this is really much of a reason to switch over, because that is a very minor discount. Now, moving on to the next story here. So, BT is apparently converting 2,000 more UK telephone boxes and payphones to gigabit Wi-Fi street hubs. So, of course, they're trying to get rid of those old telephone boxes. I mean, I don't know. I mean, you're, of course, not from Britain, Pigus. So, when you see depictions of Britain, do you ever see the red telephone box or anything like that? I mean, that's a classic depiction of Britain. However, they're trying to do away with those classic telephone boxes and other telephones. And overall, I'm not a big fan of getting rid of all of them. I mean, they can sometimes be very helpful if you don't have your phone on you and you can't really be bothered to ask some random person on the street to whether you can call somebody on their phone, which is already a bit weird to start with. A telephone box could be a pretty good option. However, we are seeing them slowly going away. And this is one replacement, and while I'm not a big fan of this, it is nice to see them giving community Wi-Fi coverage, and USB charging. However, I could see this becoming a victim of vandalism. I mean, I can't really imagine those USB ports actually working for that long, given the fact that some people might vandalize the units, and overall they are just likely to fall into a state of disrepair quite easily. So who knows whether these street hubs will actually be that popular with people. I mean, it does seem like advertising mainly for BT, because they can advertise stuff on the boards. However, it does have some community utility, so that is one thing to keep in mind. You have any thoughts, Pigus? I mean, it is a clever way, isn't it, of boosting 4G and 5G signal. I mean, that is going to be really good for E coverage, especially in the big cities, you know? I mean, yeah. Yeah, there's a few in some of the big cities, and yeah, they're going to be adding 2,000 in 200 towns and cities. So that does equal, yeah, 10 per city, I suppose, or 10 per city in town, of course. So yeah, I wonder where this will actually be put in. Hopefully they'll come out with a list of places that they will be rolling this out. I have seen this is already a thing in London and in Birmingham in certain areas. So yeah, it's cool to see this rolling out. But of course, I do still like those old telephone boxes. They still have some utility, I suppose. Do you guys in Sweden still have telephone boxes, or have you totally got rid of them? Do you know? Yeah, I mean, there's some use for them. I mean, if you need to make an emergency call, you don't have a phone. If you're out, your phone's died, and you need to call somebody. You know, these are potential uses for a payphone. However, of course, often they just fall into a state of disrepair. Nobody really uses them, and that is a good reason for them to be converted, I suppose. Yeah. And as they're trying to get rid of the analog telephone lines in general, I suppose it is a logical step. Now, Proton Mail's new desktop app is available for Linux. So if you are on Linux, this will be a interesting addition to your desktop, I suppose. It looks a lot like a web app to me. I think it probably is. And I'm not really sure whether this is actually that great, because of course, you can't really get much customization with this, and it is basically just a web app running in a container. So I'm not totally sure whether there's much of a use case for this, and whether you should just run it in your browser. Yeah. Do you have any thoughts, PS? Doesn't look great to me, you know? Yeah. Yeah, and maybe this is being run on a more hardware level. However, I'm not sure It looks a lot like a web app to me. But if that isn't the case... Oh, it is. Okay, so, you know what? I'm just calling it now. If it's a web app, it's pointless. Okay, so... I don't get why they're doing this. What do you say? Sorry. It's Electron. Like, why? Why do you need an Electron app for that? Anyway. Moving on to the Windows news. So, Windows format dialog waited for decades for a UI revamp that never came. So, apparently Dave Plummer is a former Microsoft engineer. He apparently developed a few of the elements of Microsoft's flagship operating system, Windows, such as Task Manager and a few other core utilities. And one of those pieces is apparently the format dialog that has never really seen much of an update. So this is, interesting, I suppose. Of course, Windows does have a lot of old utilities baked in. However, it is interesting to see which elements have actually been fully retained from the old Windows 90s era. You have any thoughts, Pigus? They should just update the UI. Although it is nice, sometimes it's nice to see the old UI. But perhaps they should just update it. Perhaps like a new coat of paint, Perhaps a new look, maybe? I don't know. Sure, however... However, Apple, for example, probably wouldn't let something like that happen. I don't know. I guess it's just depending on what your perspective is. But yeah, it is unlikely you'll come across this dialogue, so it is a pretty small thing. But cool, I suppose. Anyway, moving on to a story which is good news and bad news, So Meta has finally connected Threads to the Fediverse for people aged 18 or over, because I'm sure the Fediverse is so dangerous, you need to be over 18 to access it. So apparently Meta is now, allowing you to connect Threads to the Fediverse for certain users, and this is only sharing those threads to ActivityPub compatible servers, and they are not actually going to be able to respond to Threads posts. So all of the responses will be only on the Fediverse side. You will not be able to see it on Threads. So this is not really full integration here. This is rather just a way of Meta advertising Threads to Fediverse users and locking them out of actually being able to use their social network, but, using their own server. That's how I view it. I don't think this is good. I think this is Meta just trying to take advantage of the Fediverse without actually giving anything back. Yeah, but on the other hand, no replies. I'm not sure, It just sounds... Yeah, it'll be a nice way of doing that. But it isn't the best implementation that they could have come up with. They've had a lot of time to be working on this. Perhaps they could have done a better job than just this sort of halfway implementation. Those are my personal thoughts, I've had it with friends. Um, anyway, but I'm not a user to start with, so who cares? But Instagram is apparently, as well as working on Threads, connecting it to the Fediverse, Instagram is also now developing Blend, so it will recommend reels for you and a friend. Blend, you and a friend. That rhymes. That's probably not intentional. Or maybe it is. Maybe the people at TechCrunch are thinking about rhyming in their articles, in their titles. Nice, I suppose. But anyway, so this is a proposed feature that is apparently currently in development. And this is nice for some users, I suppose. This could be a nice way of socializing, a nice way of implementing more of a social aspect to social media, allowing you to share interests between you and your friend. If you could see the composition of whether this was recommended based on your friend's interests or based on your interests, maybe that could be even better. But this is a pretty cool feature in general for the short form video platform. Do you have any thoughts, Piers? Oh yeah, just to keep people informed, I do now post some YouTube Shorts and some TikToks. If you want to check me out on TikTok, I am at Sandro Linux. I also post all of that content over on YouTube Shorts. So you can, if you're on either platform, check it out. Okay, so moving right along to another social media story. So this is a interesting one for those who kind of just want a little bit of a fake social media experience. They kind of want to just give themselves likes. At least that's how this presents it. So apparently this is a new app that allows you to post anything and get likes on it. And apparently the catch is nobody will see it. So this is weird in general. Apparently you can post stuff and you'll get stuff liked, and this isn't actually real likes. This is just a fake social media platform, and I suppose this is fun for some people who want that dopamine hit, but it is totally fake. And of course you will already know that when you're downloading the app, so it isn't really much of a really good way of getting a dopamine hit from social media. I suppose it's just showing the gamified aspect of social media and how you get affected by the like count. But it apparently uses your contacts to actually choose who likes your posts according to this app. So these likes aren't actually real, they're just based on your contacts. And yeah, this is a weird idea, but I suppose it's cool if you want to try it out. What do you think, P.S.? Slightly sad? No, it stays on your device. It stays local. It stays totally on your device. No data off your device, and that's apparently a selling point. But why do you... Yeah, why would you just, you write your personal diary and it's like all your friends like. Okay, so that's a bit weird to me, but I guess you can use this if you want to. Couldn't you just write in a notes app, or just use maybe. Then again, you can just put pictures in a notes app, right? There are notes apps that support pictures. Yeah. What do you say? Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure, that could be a use case for that. Now, before we get onto this story, why don't we cover the EU opening non-compliance investigations into Apple, Meta, and Google? So all the big players here are getting investigated for non-compliance, except for notably Microsoft. So even with them putting pop-ups in, you know, in like Chrome and integrating all sorts of stuff to try and encourage people to use their platform over competitors, apparently they're being left out of this one. And it is in fact these companies that are in breach. So this is potentially going to have some ramifications for these companies. And of course they could be fined quite substantial amounts if they are found to be in breach. So we'll have to see what the commission, the EU Commission, comes up with in the 12 months that they have to conclude the proceedings. Do you have any thoughts, Pigus? Yeah, I mean, it's bad news for those big tech companies, but it's good news for consumers, I think. More potential, standardization, more potential removal of some anti-competitive features. Overall, that would be good for the consumers out there. So that is good for everybody, I suppose. Aside from investors in those companies. Yes, and the board of those companies. Anyway, moving on to BYD. So BYD Automotive or Automobile is apparently losing some market share to Huawei in China. So of course Huawei Central are coming out with a story, and apparently in the domestic Chinese market, they are seeing some competition, some stiff competition from Huawei. So they have been quite popular internationally, BYD. So they've seen quite a major international expansion here in the UK, in the EU as well, and even in the US. So we are seeing Western nations getting these BYD motors, and yeah. Well, apparently this is going to, apparently I didn't even know Huawei sold cars, but apparently they are eating into BYD's market share in China. So perhaps we might see BYD being more of a global brand instead of focusing so much on the Chinese market. Now, moving on here, Telegram is apparently going to no longer be blocked in Spain. So there was a court decision to block Telegram in Spain. However, the courts have now gone back on it. Apparently now you can use Telegram as you want within Spain. But there will still be some anti-piracy groups going after Telegram for their perceived lack of action on piracy. And the judge did justify the blocking, but it has been currently repealed. Now, moving on to quite an interesting story for those who are following the doings of Google, the doings of a number of big tech firms. So there's been quite a move to block ad block. However, it appears that the American public do not agree, as in they are now, apparently, the majority of them are now using ad block. So, according to a new survey by Census Wide on behalf of Ghostery, the maker of an ad block, 52% of Americans now use AdBlock, up from 34% in 2022. So that's quite a substantial gain here. And apparently, if you're sort of experienced in the tech field, you're much more likely to use AdBlock, with 72% of experienced programmers and 76% of cybersecurity experts using AdBlock. So, of course, cybersecurity experts will be very watchful of ads, because there is malvertising where companies actually use adverts to spread malware, and that is a cybersecurity threat, which cybersecurity experts will be aware of. And yeah, of course, if you're more knowledgeable on technology, you'll know how these ads could be weaponized. And in general, now people are trying to get around these more sophisticated blocking of ad blocks. And yeah, I suppose that this is sort of the opposite of what Google intended with trying to block ads on YouTube. But I guess it's logically what happens when you tell consumers no. Anyway, moving on, and when you tell the internet no. Anyway, moving on to the last story. So, this is something that was close to being the headline today. So, Canva is apparently acquiring Serif's Affinity apps. So, Affinity is quite a well-known suite of photo editing applications on Mac. So, this is a pretty cool app suite. Affinity is. And of course, Canva is very popular for photo editing, so it's a logical combination. However, this does throw into question perpetual licensing of the Affinity applications. And right now, Canva is promising to not end perpetual licensing, but that could be something on the chopping block in the future. Because Canva might end up rolling out subscriptions for this photo editing app. But generally, this is an interesting addition to the dynamic between Adobe and other photo editing apps. Because, of course, they recently didn't acquire Figma when they could have. And yeah, now apparently Canva are consolidating the market slightly by acquiring the Affinity apps. So we'll see how this combination of online and on-device photo editing works out for Canva, and how that works out for the consumer as well. So yeah, so big news for the users of the Affinity suite, I suppose. Anyway, guys, thank you guys for watching. I'm just going to check. There aren't any comments, so yeah. So thanks you guys for watching. Once again, like, subscribe, and share. Check me out on Twitter if you want to. You can check me on TikTok, or you can check out my YouTube shorts. I'll be coming out with some more of those soon. So that is it. Thank you guys for watching once again. I hope everybody has a good Easter weekend, and that is not the correct link for my TikTok. So yeah, so thank you guys again for watching. Like,